fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
The constitutional point of view was critical for Jefferson's support of the Bill of Rights.
As we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens, I can hear you!
Is time running out?
It's Saturday. Welcome to the Hayden Collins radio program, The Intelligence Syndicate. I'm loving it. It's March. It's going to be spring soon. I bought way too much firewood this year. There's a good possibility I won't get to use it all, so we'll have some great bonfires this summer with marshmallows and the kids all around the bonfire and having fun. It'll be a good time. It'll be a really good time. Hey, little history note today, and this is the kind of game we're going to play. Just a little history note. I'm helping those of you that have been following the show. You know, I'm in the middle of my doctorate program. We're doing things and so on and so forth. And one of the students I'm working with is doing some deep dive studies into the slave trade from the East Indies. And boy, I tell you what a paradigm shift for the student. And it was amazing. And this was actually out of a very good book that we're using for the class, history book, so on and so forth. And I am co-instructor for the course. I don't get to be there all the time. But the wonderful thing that came out of this, and it was kind of hard to recognize what it was. But for all of the U.S. press, you would think that we cornered the market in slavery. I mean, we cornered the market. By gosh, it was the United States and the Confederates. Those are the only slave owners ever in the world. They're the only ones ever to do anything, even though we had northern states. In fact, I didn't know till recently, would you believe it or not, that slavery was never lifted from the state of Tennessee until the governor of Tennessee did it? Because it was not included in the Declaration from Abraham Lincoln. I didn't know that. I'm learning so much in this class that I'm co-teaching. I'm co-teaching and I'm learning a lot out of this class. It was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. So here's the neat part about this. We're having an in-depth discussion. They're doing some research and they're looking at the projected numbers and what was done in the East Indies and the United States. And this young lady came back to me and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I never knew. I've always been taught blah, 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 United States, blah, 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 Confederacy, blah, 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 everything else. And I never knew." And I said, yeah, isn't that something? So I'll quit teasing you guys. The key thing in that whole discovery process was, holy crap, we didn't do jack. We didn't have anything going on. The slave trade in that area of the world, 5,000 times. What was the? I mean, I'm exaggerating just to give you a point. Huge. And in North Africa, it's still happening. Slave trade is still happening in Africa. Slave trade is still happening in parts of Southwest Asia. Just a thought. Put it in the mix. Stir it up a little bit. Let somebody come to you with some assumptions about slavery in the United States, and now you've got something to research and bring to their attention. And, give them something to fight for. Have them go free those slaves. Probably a pretty good idea, actually. Nonetheless, okay, another historical moment that was oddly brought to my attention that we had a lot of fun with. There was an opportunity back during the Civil War. Yeah, that's the era we're studying now. That the course of the country, the entire direction of the country, the political course of the country, the operational course of the country, what was going on, the entire decision process was taken away from the President of the United States. It was removed from the President of the Confederacy. It was removed from all houses, all senates, all elected officials. It was removed from sheriff's departments. All these items were removed. And the course of the country was not decided by elected individuals. It was decided by a volunteer. Now I'm going to give you a little story here. Now the story, for those of you who want to look it up, it's called Little Round Top. Okay, and it's the turning point of the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, Gettysburg was one nasty show where everybody showed up and very few people left. But essentially, it was the battle that never should have happened, actually. A huge battle. Huge divisions involved, regiments involved, all over the place. Terrible fighting. A lot of our historical, taps came out of Gettysburg. It was played across the battlefield for the first time. A lot of things came out of Gettysburg. Chain of commands, operational chain of commands that changed and functioned, and how failing chain of commands worked, and directions of officers, and so on and so forth. So let me take you close to the end of the battle. There's some Alabama divisions, some Texas divisions, and they're up against whatever's left of Yankee forces. And Yankee forces had mustered themselves around Little Round Top, which is, if you ever go to Gettysburg, it's obvious. I mean, it's all flat land as far as the eye can see, and there's just this little hillside, just big enough to be called a hillside, at the far end of now what's known as the battlefield. And if you can imagine the unit, and I wouldn't say a fresh unit, this unit that arrived there had marched 20 miles a day for 4 days with little to no water and no food at all, to go there and get a position, to hold a position. And they got stuck on Little Round Top is what happened. And as soon as I got up there, they were attacked. And then they were attacked again within 20 minutes. And then they were attacked again. They were attacked several times. Several times. From the stories from the colonel that was in charge of that area, is Colonel Chamberlain, he said there were times that he had more Confederate soldiers around him than he had of his own soldiers. And that the battle had been so fierce, there were times that, the battle lines were not even clear, and they didn't even know who was who and where it was. You were just fighting for your own survival. I mean, that's pretty intense hand-to-hand combat. Well, if you can imagine this happening 7 times and you don't have any reinforcements, now let me make things worse for you. There's nothing behind him. So if the Confederates break through Colonel Chamberlain's line, there's nothing stopping them from going to Washington, D.C. and ending the war. And there wasn't. They just run over everything. So, picture yourself as Colonel Chamberlain, and let's say it's time for the 8th attack. They're going to come down on you. It's the 8th attack. I mean, you don't have any ammunition. Most of your men are wounded or dying. Others are just standing around waiting for the next attack, doing what they can. And you got to make a decision. Now, see, this is something a lot of people don't understand about military service. If you're an enlisted soldier, and you're contracted to your officers and to the Constitution, okay? If you're an officer, you are commissioned, and you are commissioned to the Constitution. And then there's a big difference. As the officer, you have the most precious resource that the American people can offer in its defense of its nation, and that's its youth, its service people, its soldiers. So imagine for a moment that you're Colonel Chamberlain, you're outnumbered 10-1, you've held off 7 attacks, you can't hold off the 8th attack, they're going to overrun you, and then they're on their way to Washington, D.C. So you've got to make a decision. And the decision you got to make, you got to think about it. The lives of the soldiers you have left, either they're all going to die, and you're going to die with them, or you're going to surrender and hope they get, treated well, and after the war they get taken back home, or you retreat and then there's nothing you can do about it. You're just going to keep running until you hopefully run into reinforcements and try to stop them from getting to Washington, D.C. And you've already marched 4 days at 20 miles a day, so you're not going to go far. So looking at all the opportunities you have in front of you, you got to make a decision. Now, this is what I meant about the President of the United States or the President of the Confederacy. Nobody made this decision. No politician made this decision. No educated individual in Congress or the House, no Speaker of the House made this decision. But the course of the country all boiled down to what was Colonel Chamberlain going to do? They're getting ready for their 8th attack. He's standing there with all whatever he has left of his troops. He knows there's nothing behind him between here and Washington, D.C. And then it's done. The war's over. Well, he's on top of that hillside. He has the best opportunity for success if he charges off that hillside into the enemy and tries to take him by surprise. He's got the hillside, which will be easier for his troops to come down. He's fixing bayonets, so there's no more ammunition left. He'll just do what he has. And go for broke. Go for the best option he possibly can, hoping for the best results, and then maybe dwindling down their forces as much as they can, to save a nation. Now, when I say colonel, I said, oh my gosh, it's a colonel. It's a high up guy. Colonels, they make big decisions and this, that, and the other. Well, during that time period, people were promoted to ranks based on their civilian positions. So, a teacher would be promoted to captain automatically because they're a teacher. They've dealt with students. They've dealt with command of a classroom. They just now have to deal with some lieutenants, and the lieutenants have got to deal with soldiers. If you're a doctor, you're brought in as a captain, if, whatever the case may be. Well, if you're a leader of a regiment from a state, and the state volunteered that regiment, you were basically elected into your position or assigned your position. So Colonel Chamberlain was assigned his position as the Maine, and I mean the state of Maine volunteers that were fighting in this battle. Prior to that, Colonel Chamberlain was a school teacher. Yeah, you heard that right. He was a school teacher. So let's take a step back just for a moment. The decision in the course of this nation that was not made by a president, that was not made by anybody else. It was made by a school teacher in the middle of a battleground at Little Round Top with no reinforcements, no supplies, no water, no ammunition, no opportunity for success. And I'll tell you what happened. He looked around and gave the order to fix bayonets to go down the hillside. And there's some details to the charge, but he put his units together, whatever was left. They formed ranks and charged down the hillside at the units that were organizing for the next attack. They were caught by surprise. The most unique thing about this is the units at the bottom of the hill, because of the fog of war. Now, you need to look that up if you don't know what it is, but basically, it's you don't know what's going on beyond your eyesight. Other divisions could be moving around you or anything else. So because of the fog of war, the Alabama unit and the Texas unit thought that the Yankees had been reinforced. Because when they left them up at the top of the hill last time, there weren't that many of them left. They were going to take the hill. Now all of a sudden they're charging down the hill. Holy crap, they must have been reinforced. Things must be going wrong. We better fall back into a position because, we don't have reinforcements and we haven't had water and we're low on ammunition. So he took them by surprise. He took prisoners, took them by surprise. Not only that, gained the ground and caused the other units to retreat back to their previous standard from the day before. And what I mean by standard is where the flag was. So your position on the battlefield is where your standard is. So they retreated back to where their standard was the day before, which was almost, across into the tree line. So think about that for a moment. Colonel Chamberlain, a school teacher, had to make a do-or-die situation decision, made that decision, charged down the hill, took them by surprise, and changed the course of a nation. because he was not going to last the attack. He was not going to, fall into a position or fall back. The troops didn't have the strength. They didn't have the supplies. It was pretty much over for him. So let's look at Colonel Chamberlain for a moment. He survived the war, by the way. Their unit was gloriously pulled back after that. But he survived the war. His brother was serving with him. His brother was serving with him on the battlefield. He was wounded in combat. He shell fragment in the leg or the foot or something like that. I forget like that. And when he got home, because of his heroic stance on the battlefield, with no experience at all, now I want you to think about this, with no experience at all, was asked to run for governor of the state of Maine and held the governorship for 4 terms. Actually, basically for the rest of his life. When you make decisions that are successful, and that example is put forward, it's an example for everyone to see and for people to mimic. Always lead by example. That's one of the phrases they say, lead by example. The opportunity he had to lead by example, and it was successful, strangely enough, put him into a position to where he led the state of Maine for a long period of time as the leader and CEO of the state of Maine as the governor. And in doing so as the governor, led there on the political battlefield after he was done leading on the battlefield at Gettysburg. The whole purpose of today was discussing what happens in the classroom when students make discoveries. So we talked about, the discovery of the slave trade in the East Indies. It's like, oh my gosh, look at this. Where are the protesters there? What's going on there? And then we talk about, what transpired with leadership on the battlefield. And if there's anything I want you to take away from this entire scenario, is make a decision. Just make a decision. I would rather have individuals who make decisions and get it wrong occasionally, and I have to rein them back in, than individuals that are too timid to make any kind of decision and nothing gets done. Make a decision. The second part of this is educate yourself. These young students that are looking through this stuff, that had their minds set on understanding that we were the only country with slavery because of the Civil War and this, that, and the other, and all of a sudden they come to an awareness in a classroom that, holy crap, look at this. And it wasn't even taught to them when they went through high school or grade school. K through 12 did not teach them this. K through 12 said, the United States is bad, we had slavery, and the United States corrected itself. And it makes it look like we are the worst people on the planet. Well, that generation, they're saying they're the worst people on the planet, so on and so forth. When at the time, and you look at it, they were no different from any other nation on the planet. And in fact, once we wiped it out, you have to look around the world to see how long it took everybody else to wipe it out. And in some areas, it's still not wiped out. So the next time you hear a cry for leadership, the next time you hear a cry for saying, oh, we got to do this or do that, make a decision, stand up and do something. And when you stand up and do something, do the right thing. Don't be afraid. But the key thing here is looking at these battles, these opportunities, political or otherwise. You got to pick and choose your battles, and you better educate yourself. Better educate yourself, because there's a lot of people running for president on the Democratic side that are out there saying some things that, after things that we've learned today, you scratch your head and wonder why, and maybe they never had the opportunity to learn like these students did. Maybe these presidential candidates never had the opportunity to do the research they're doing and see exactly what happened and where it happened. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy to see where we are today. Very happy. I'm very disappointed in the educational system to where this kind of light going off in a college student did not occur somewhere in the 8th or 9th grade. I see this as a detrimental issue to our society, where they've tried to rewrite a history and make it more amplified and more designed to destroy our history as they rewrote it, with no comparison to anything else that was going on around the world. Where one is guilty, they're all guilty, and where one was corrected, they all should be corrected. And it's amazing how many people have stopped correcting. They've gone as far as they're willing to go because it's not in our backyard anymore. That's somebody else's problem. Just some food for thought, some things to think about. All right, Oops, I Arted is coming up next. And the girls are at it again. And then no roundtable this week. Actually, spring break for these guys. Oh my gosh. Well, at least half of them anyway, so I have to put up with that. But in the meantime, looking for some more interns so we can do some more roundtables. If you'd like to be an intern, it's Hayden at haydencollins.org. Just show up and give us an email. We'll have the lead intern reach out to you, and as the lead intern reaches out to you, you sort things out. But don't be afraid. We have independents, we have Democrats, we have Republicans, full scale. Have some green. Well, we have two Green Party people. Yeah, I guess Amy's Green Party. Well, she says she's Green Party, but I see her I see her lean more conservative than any of the other ones. But nonetheless, it's open discussions. Your opinions were welcome. So it's Hayden at haydencollins.org if you'd like to intern. And this is going to help you put something on your resume besides the fact that you went to school. You know, a nice reference letter from the show talking about how you're an honor personality, what kind of work you did, where you did it, and the things and the subject matter you discuss. And I will let you know that once you leave the show, you will have zero problems speaking publicly. All right, we'll see you after the break.